At 44, Macaulay Culkin breaks the quiet that once protected him like a thin sheet of glass and says, "I was everybody's favorite kid until I wasn't. And some people made sure I stayed broken." The world still remembers the grin, the traps, the winter glow of Home Alone, but tonight, the nostalgia peels back. What's left isn't a cute memory. It's a ledger. Behind the magazine covers and lady-night punchlines, there were rooms where deals were made without him, friendships that evaporated when the cameras cooled, and whispers that hardened into headlines. He never wrote a tell-all, never rushed to defend himself every time a rumor moved faster than the truth. He learned to disappear, but disappearance isn't forgiveness. In this confessionist-style reckoning, Culkin finally points to 5 names that, reportedly and allegedly, drew the deepest lines across his life and career. Some were idols turned indifferent. Some were peers who used the child star brand and left the man behind. And at least one was close enough to hurt like family. "I don't want revenge," he says. "I want the record to stop lying. What you're about to hear will challenge the fairy tale and test the audience's loyalty to the myth of Hollywood's golden boy." Macaulay Carson Culkin was born on the 26th of August, 1980, in New York City, the third of 7 children in a cramped Manhattan apartment. His father, Kit Culkin, was a former Broadway actor, and his mother, Patricia Brentrup, kept the family together while money was always tight. From the age of 4, Macaulay was on stage or in front of a camera, a small boy with big eyes and a knack for stealing scenes. By 1990, the world knew his name. Home Alone turned him into an international phenomenon, grossing hundreds of millions and making him, for a brief moment, the most famous child on the planet. He followed with My Girl, Home Alone 2, and The Good Son. Proving he could handle both sweetness and darker roles, studios fought for him. Tabloids adored him. His face sold lunchboxes, magazines, and ticket sales. But behind the smiles was a childhood sacrificed. Endless press tours replaced playgrounds. Long shooting days blurred the seasons. Friends were rare, and privacy was non-existent. He once said in an interview, "I didn't choose to be a star at 10, it chose me, and it wouldn't let go." Even as the highest-paid child actor of his era, he was navigating power struggles between his parents, aggressive managers, and an industry that saw him as a commodity more than a child. By his early teens, Macaulay had already walked away from Hollywood once, weary from the weight of fame and family conflict. But walking away didn't erase the wounds or the people who left them. In the years that followed, each betrayal etched deeper, shaping the man he would become and the list he would never forget. Kit Culkin, the father who turned manager into master. In Hollywood, stage parents can be both a blessing and a curse. For Macaulay Culkin, his father Kit was the gatekeeper and the jailer. In the early days, Kit was the one who spotted Macaulay's potential, pushing him into auditions, negotiating contracts, and standing guard on set. But as the box office numbers soared, so did Kit's control. According to those close to the family, he began treating his son less like a child and more like a revenue stream. The turning point came during the mid-92nd, when Macaulay was fresh off Richie Rich and commanding millions per film. Kit allegedly began demanding unprecedented perks, hotel suites, production control, even script approvals, not for Macaulay's benefit, but to satisfy his own ego. Producers bristled. Rumors of the most difficult stage parent in Hollywood began to circulate. At home, tensions were worse. Kit's fierce temper and uncompromising demands drove a wedge between Macaulay's parents, leading to a bitter custody battle. When his parents split, the fight over Macaulay's earnings became a war. Kit, reportedly fearing the loss of control, tried to keep his name on the contracts and accounts. Macaulay's decision to legally remove both parents' names from his trust fund shocked the industry and made it clear he no longer trusted the man who once called him "my little partner." In later interviews, Macaulay's words were simple but cutting. "I didn't lose my father. I lost a manager who happened to be my father." It was the first time the boy who could make the world laugh felt the sting of betrayal, not from Hollywood, but from home. Michael Jackson, the idol who vanished. In the haze of his early fame, Macaulay Culkin found an unlikely friend and mentor in Michael Jackson. The pop icon invited him to Neverland, offering an escape from the relentless glare of the cameras and the suffocating control at home. For a boy who had lost trust in adults, Jackson's attention felt like a lifeline, a place where he could play, laugh, and feel like a kid again. But the friendship came with a shadow. As Jackson's own life became engulfed in scandal, Macaulay's name was pulled into the swirl of allegations and media-feeding frenzies. He defended Jackson publicly, standing by him when others fled, enduring invasive questions, and whispered suspicions that had nothing to do with his own actions. Then, without warning, Jackson pulled away. Sources close to Macaulay say that in the early 2000s, calls stopped being returned, invitations ceased, and the man who once called him like family disappeared from his life. No explanation, no goodbye, just absence. The distance was amplified by the press, which continued to tie Macaulay to Jackson's controversies long after their contact ended. The betrayal wasn't in the scandal itself. Macaulay had made peace with defending a friend. It was in the abandonment, the sudden erasure after years of loyalty. "I thought we were unshakable," Macaulay would later reflect privately. "Turns out, I was just another chapter in his story, one he could close whenever it suited him." Mila Kunis, The Love That Turned to Silence. In the early 2000s, Macaulay Culkin's retreat from Hollywood was matched by a quieter, more private life, and at the center of it was Mila Kunis. Their relationship lasted nearly a decade, a rare constant in a life defined by instability. Away from the spotlight, they shared apartments, late-night conversations, and the sense that they were each other's safe harbor. For Macaulay, who had grown up in an industry that thrived on betrayal, Mila was proof that loyalty still existed. But as Mila's career began to skyrocket, that 70-second show, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Black Swan, the gap between their worlds widened. Hollywood parties replaced quiet nights in, and her name became synonymous with A-list glamour. Insiders claim Macaulay began to feel like a shadow in her life, tolerated but no longer cherished. The breaking point came in 2011, when news of their split reached the tabloids before Macaulay had even processed it himself. He learned through friends, not from Mila, that she had already begun seeing someone else. In the days that followed, the calls grew shorter, then stopped altogether. Interviews painted the breakup as mutual, but Macaulay's friends recall him as gutted and blindsided. For a man who had guarded his heart so fiercely, the pain was sharper because he had let her in completely. "It wasn't losing her that hurt most," he reportedly told a confidant. "It was realizing I'd been alone long before she walked away." Warner Brothers, the studio that shut the door. By the time Macaulay Culkin was in his early teens, Warner Brothers had been both his playground and his proving ground. The studio backed several of his films, from family-friendly blockbusters to riskier projects that showcased his range. For a while, it seemed like they would stand by their young star as he grew into adulthood. But Hollywood has a short memory when it comes to loyalty. When Macaulay stepped away from acting in the mid-90s to escape the chaos of his personal life, Warner Brothers initially left the door open for a return. Yet when he finally sought a comeback in the early 2000s, he was met with polite refusals, vague excuses, and meetings that mysteriously fell through. According to an ex-executive, the studio had quietly decided he was box office poison. Too much baggage from his family disputes, too many years away from the screen, and too many tabloid headlines linking him to other people's scandals. Roles he was once offered outright were now under consideration until they vanished altogether, often ending up in the hands of safer, cleaner-cut names. The most painful blow came when Warner Brothers revived a franchise he had helped define, but didn't even ask him to audition for a role. It wasn't about talent, it was about optics. They didn't want the risk of his name attached. "That was the moment I realized Hollywood doesn't break up with you to your face," Macaulay once said in a rare moment of candor. "It just stops returning your calls and pretends you never existed." Brenda Song, the partner who broke the pact. When Macaulay Culkin met Brenda Song in the late 2010 on the set of Changeland, it felt like the universe was offering him a rare second chance, not just at love, but at building the family he never had. They were both former child stars, both had navigated the strange alchemy of fame and isolation, and both swore they would protect their private life from the chaos of Hollywood. In the beginning, Their relationship was almost defiantly quiet. They kept the cameras at bay, spoke rarely about each other in interviews, and built a life that revolved around shared routines rather than red carpets. In 2021, they welcomed their first child. And for Macaulay, it was a moment of redemption, a promise that the cycle of fractured family lines would end with him. But promises in Hollywood are fragile. According to friends close to the couple, Brenda's ambitions began to shift. Offers poured in, and with them came the temptation to re-enter the limelight more aggressively. Macaulay supported her career, but he reportedly grew uneasy as the walls they'd built together started to crumble. The breaking point came in whispers at dinner spotted with an influential producer, long rumored to be linked to casting decisions through personal favors, texts left unanswered during filming, and a subtle but growing distance at home. Whether the rumors of a deeper betrayal were true or just industry poison, Macaulay felt the impact the same way: abandonment. The final fracture wasn't a dramatic fight or a public scandal. It was the quiet realization that the one person he trusted with his rebuilt life was no longer on the same page. Friends recall him moving into a separate space for clarity, though he never confirmed a breakup publicly. "I built something sacred," he allegedly told a friend, "and I watched it traded for something shiny." It was the wound that cut deepest, not just because it cost him love, but because it reopened every scar from the betrayals before. By the time he finished naming the 5 people who left their marks on his life, Macaulay Culkin wasn't trembling with rage. He was steady, almost calm. The years had dulled the sting but sharpened the clarity. Fame had been both his crown and his cage, each betrayal another bar in the prison he carried in his mind. He spoke about patterns, about how trust, once broken, reshapes every relationship that follows. When you grow up in the public eye, you learn early that love and loyalty are currency, he said, and the exchange rate changes depending on who's buying. The boy who once set clever traps in a movie house now understood that real life doesn't give you warning signs or time to prepare. The people you let in can walk out without notice, and the world will still expect you to smile for the cameras. But this wasn't a call for pity. It was a statement of survival. Macaulay made it clear that speaking now wasn't about revenge, but about reclaiming the narrative that had been written for him since childhood. "I forgave myself, but not them," he said firmly. "They taught me what I will never accept again, and that is a gift I'll carry longer than the hurt." Looking directly into the lens, he left a message for anyone watching who had lived their own version of his story. If you've ever been left behind, silenced, or treated like you were disposable, know this: you're not alone, and you're not wrong for remembering. You've heard his truth: 5 names, 5 betrayals, and a lifetime of lessons carved from the sharp edges of fame. Now it's your turn to decide. Which of these stories struck you the hardest? Was it the family who blurred the line between love and control, the idols who vanished without a word, or the partners who traded trust for something glittering but empty? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters, and every perspective adds to the conversation about what it truly costs to live under the spotlight. If you want more unfiltered stories from the stars you thought you knew, hit that like button, subscribe to Faded Crowns, and turn on notifications. We're not done. In our next video, we reveal the one Hollywood power player Macaulay Culkin feared more than anyone else, and the reason why their shadow still looms over his career. So, which betrayal hurt the most for you?